Two intrepid explorers, two different approaches. One with a deep-seated knowledge of penguin conservation, and the other, a passionate wildlife filmmaker who met while filming the documentary Secrets of the Penguins for Disney+. But what does it take to be an actual modern-day explorer? Today I have the pleasure of speaking once more to wildlife researcher, conservationist, 2019 Rolex Awards laureate, and president of the Global Penguin Society, Dr. Pablo Garcia Borboroglu, and wildlife filmmaker, presenter, and BAFTA Award winner, Bertie Gregory. Together, Pablo and Bertie have been named the 2025 Rolex National Geographic Explorers of the Year. I'm Alex Honnold, fellow Explorer of the Year, professional rock climber, and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who help to solve today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with Rolex's Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries. Now, you might have noticed some changes to the show. First and foremost, you can watch us now. Just search for Planet Visionaries on YouTube or Spotify. But before we go any further, I want to explain why we made this show. This podcast was created to shed light on the people and partners of the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, visionaries who study our natural world and protect our ecosystems. But why does Rolex have this initiative? For almost a century, Rolex has supported explorers who push the boundaries. Over time, the company has moved from championing exploration for the sake of discovery to conservation for the sake of the planet. Rolex stands alongside its explorers, scientists, and entrepreneurs, named partners, supporting their work to build a better future for all life on Earth. They include Dr. Sylvia Earle's Mission Blue, which Rolex has partnered with since 2014 to preserve the oceans, the National Geographic Society, which studies the impacts of climate change, and the Rolex Awards, which for more than 45 years have been supporting individuals whose innovative projects are literally making the world better. And that's where I come in. The Honnold Foundation is supported by the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative. The foundation supports community-led solar projects around the world, and our goal is to improve lives and reduce reliance on fossil fuels while letting communities lead the way to a brighter future. I have to say, everyone I get to talk to through Planet Visionaries is truly remarkable. So let's get into it.
Good luck, little penguins. My name's Bertie Gregory. I'm a National Geographic explorer and wildlife filmmaker, and I'm very fortunate to get to hang out with animals all over the world and share my passion for them with everyone else.
So my name is Poppy Borboroglu. I am a penguin researcher and conservationist. I think penguins are the mission of my life, and I try to dedicate all the time to make their lives easier.
I think it's important to remember that we live on an incredible planet with some unbelievable wildlife. And the great news is that although we've done bad things to Mother Nature, she is very resilient. And if you give her the chance, she'll come back on an unbelievable scale. So let's get to work.
The solution to the planet, but also to our anxiety problems, is to do something, you know?
I've learned from penguins that they're an animal of contradiction. On the one hand, they're capable of surviving some of the toughest conditions on Earth and diving deeper than any other bird. But yet at the same time, they can be completely overwhelmed by a small 3-inch wide crack in the ice that they could just step over. But they don't. They spend 4 hours staring at it. Even an animal that is incredibly capable has its flaws. So I've learned from them that you shouldn't try to be perfect.
They are so focused and determined. And I would like to be like them more.
Every now and again, I come across a person or group of people that have turned things around, and that the animals and the ecosystem is making a comeback. So we're not just kind of maintaining the status quo. It's actually better than it was 10 years ago. That's what gives me hope, is that we can do it. We just need to give nature the chance.
I stay optimistic because I can see with my own eyes the consequences of our actions in the past, in the good sense. Because we did something 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and we see colonies thriving. We see places where the humans can coexist with wildlife. The planet we leave behind will be defined by the species that still walk on Earth because we stood up when it mattered.
Both of you guys, tell me about your experiences with penguins.
I've been working with penguins for 36 years. I live in Patagonia, in southern part of Argentina, so they are my neighbors. And I do research, and I also work for their conservation.
About 10 years ago, I was sent off by National Geographic to film penguins for my first time. And I came back kind of successful and having fallen in love. And they keep sending me back. And I can't get enough. I just spent the last 2 years filming them. And I thought I knew penguins before I started the project. Turns out I was wrong. They're full of surprises.
It's like, what kind of surprises?
I guess every time I thought I'd seen kind of penguins hit their limit, a storm had got too strong or too cold, or a barrier was in the way that surely they could never overcome, they would suddenly find a way to do it. And actually, Alex, relevant to you, one time I found some emperor penguins that had fallen down into a crevasse, and I could see them with the drone looking down on them. The crevasse was like, I don't know, 15, 20 feet deep. And I was like, they're done. And the next day, I came back to look in the crack, and the crack was empty. And I was like, this is impossible. These penguins have ice climbed 20 feet. And later that day, another group of penguins fell in the same crack, and I actually watched them and filmed them climbing out of this crack. And yeah, they were using their wings to kind of wedge themselves in the crack, and their beak as an ice axe. So yeah, you should take some notes from them.
That's great. You wouldn't think that flippers are really that good at climbing.
I don't think they are. It took them a long time, but if there's one thing that penguins are good at, they're very determined little birds.
That's the same way the climbers struggle out of crevasses, just by struggling as hard as they can for as long as it takes. Just clawing your way out of the ice. That's amazing. So both of you guys, can you tell me about the Secrets of the Penguins, what that project is?
I participated there in 2 of the chapters, and I also helped with the scientific contents. Film was used from all over the places, from Antarctica to Galapagos, Namibia, Argentina. But it was not the typical documentary where you see, okay, penguins incubate for 40 days. It's not the typical thing. Of course, it was a National Geographic Disney product. So it's more about the secrets, what Bertie was saying, the things that we thought we knew, but we didn't. And there were so many things that we went there to film because we have the idea or the script. And then penguins, they did whatever they wanted to. And that became a big part of the documentary because we were not expecting that to happen, but it was so unbelievable. My viewpoint as a researcher, it was really shocking in a good way because I could see things I never thought. I could see things I never read about. And then I was watching that, and we were filming that. And that's the amazing part, because we could share with everybody all those fantastic secrets. I was laughing when Bertie was saying that, these crazy penguins, they, surpass the limits, and that happens to us as researchers, because we try to do research on them and find patterns, like commonalities. But it's not easy to do that with penguins, because when you think you have something, then you have that group of penguins that they do the opposite thing. So they're always challenging what we know about them.
They're not willing to stay on script, and they don't act on command. Maybe they're just not good talent for a TV show.
Yeah, that's true. Although, Alex, I mean, if you applied the same logic for climbers don't follow scripts either. So
that's why there aren't that many TV shows.
Touche. From my point of view, full disclosure, when I was first asked to be part of Secrets of the Penguins, I thought it was a terrible show title, because we were setting ourselves up to fail. I thought, if you call something Secrets of the Penguins, you have to film something that no one has seen before. You need to find out some secrets. And I knew firsthand that penguins live in very challenging places to film. But at the same time, it's kind of an interesting thing that they've also been filmed quite a lot before. So it's kind of a double whammy challenge. But I'm very glad that after 2 years of filming all over the world, both in places that I think people expect to find penguins, Antarctica next to icebergs, as well as in some more surprising places like in deserts and on volcanic islands in the tropics, that I thought I knew penguins. I was wrong. We found some secrets, that's for sure.
Like, it might be jumping ahead, but let's hear, a few of the secrets.
My favorite secret to me was probably in Antarctica. We were there to film emperor penguin chicks fledging. So that's when they take their very first swim. The parents by this point have abandoned them, so they're by themselves. And most of these emperor penguin chicks, they would jump into the sea off of the sea ice. So that would involve falling maybe 1 or 2 feet high into the water. But one group of several hundred chicks took a wrong route on their way to the ocean and found themselves stuck at the top of a 50-foot ice cliff. And I thought, this has never been filmed before. So I assumed they were going to turn around and go back the way they came. They didn't. They just stent it and started to jump off this cliff. Little base jumping penguins.
Did it work out?
Alex, this is a show for Disney. Of course they survived. No. In all seriousness, they did survive. I mean, they sort of, the first one stepped up to the plate and jumped. And what I love about them is this is going to sound anthropomorphic, but it's true. The chicks, when they're abandoned by their parents, they have these little friendships between each other. So when they're abandoned, you'd think they're alone, but they're not. They've got all their little buddies to hang out with, and they really gain kind of confidence from each other because all the chicks have different personalities. Some will be more kind of bold, some will be more conservative. So the one of the bold ones at the front just stepped up and jumped. And as soon as one jumped and all the others saw, the rest were like, oh, cool. Yeah, that's obviously the way to go, because they don't know that there's a much easier route if they just turn around and went a few miles back the way they came. They would jump in, make a big splash, and then, they all swam off to the horizon to become, fully fledged adult emperor penguins. It was an amazing moment to witness.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I really hope everyone gets to see the film. So we've heard about penguins surviving on their own, but what happens when humans are actively causing them harm? Poppy, can you tell us about the landmark legal win that you just had?
Yeah, that happened in like 4 years ago almost. It was a case in which we found that a person with a landowner with a bulldozer, he destroyed a big 4 parts of a penguin colony, a Magellanic penguin colony here in Patagonia. We were the first ones to arrive, and so that originated a legal case. The prosecutor called us to be part as the technical experts in the trial. It took us 3 years to get the right evidence. It was the first case, the first environmental case in Argentina to reach an oral trial. So far, 6 judges have found this person guilty of aggravated environmental damage, animal cruelty, and malice. But of course, there's a lot of appeal in situations. We still have 2 more to go. It is very important because that highlighted the need to improve the legislation in Argentina. All the environmental crimes in Argentina and in many other countries, they are not in the penal code. You don't have environmental prosecution offices. But it was very hard, Alex, because we were attacked severely because we were holding the evidence, and they didn't have the evidence to show that didn't happen and that didn't cause the harm it caused. So they wanted to attack us personally and professionally because they couldn't attack the facts. A complete different dimension to what we were used to. When we were under attack, I was repeating to myself, this is for the penguins, this is for the penguins, even in trial. And hopefully, after the verdict, the province declared a protected area, protecting 360,000 adults. So now I don't care about anything else because that protected area will stay there forever. And it is adding a new layer of protection to those penguins.
Can you talk about how technology helped in the legal case? Like what you used to document the assault on the penguin colony?
We could describe what happened in this place and in this other place, but we didn't know when. And that is critical because these penguins migrate. In the summer, in the southern hemisphere, from September to April, these penguins breed. They're in their colonies, they're on land most of the time. But then they leave, they go to the ocean. So the person that was accused, he said, no, I did everything before penguins were there. And then the prosecutor contacted National Geographic. And this was very unusual because National Geographic, they don't normally get involved in this kind of legal cases. But they realized that it was critical for the case. So they bought and analyzed like 15 satellite images. And Sam Guilford, one of the senior directors of a mapping and geography team, he analyzed everything and he even flew to Argentina to testify in court. And everything was very important because it showed that he was destroying the colony throughout 4 months. And he ended up in a day where the chicks were hatching. And according to the prosecutor, it was the first case of this nature where environmental images were used. So that was a new thing for Argentina. And now this verdict is pushing new legislation into the National Congress. So hopefully we will have a biodiversity law that protects all wildlife. So from penguins, we would be able to protect condors, whales, many kinds of species in Argentina.
Did you guys meet through the Secrets of the Penguins series?
No, we had actually met before that. We had met at the Poppy won the Indianapolis Prize, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's like the Nobel Prize for conservation.
I haven't heard of that, actually.
Yeah, big mic drop for Poppy for winning that. And I was roped in to give an award and interview Poppy. So that was how we first met. And
how long ago was that?
Yeah, 2023.
2023. So just when we met, that was just when Secrets of the Penguins had just started, and it was almost like the week before. It was like, yeah, you're going to be working with this guy Poppy. He's like a penguin legend. And then ended up meeting him in Indianapolis. And so I felt very lucky that I got to spend it with a very lovely human who's done a lot of good for penguins.
And what does it mean? You guys have both recently been named National Geographic and Rolex Explorers of the Year.
Yeah, well, that I think was connected to the Secrets of the Penguins project, and so I was very honored that I was given that award alongside Poppy, because I think if I'd won it by myself, I would have felt very inadequate. So I felt like Poppy was sort of waving the flag and holding the award higher.
It was my honor because Bertie is a celebrity, so for me it was amazing.
I know you've had such a legacy in penguin conservation, and yet you're still grinding along with projects like this and being honored in different ways. I mean, what does that mean for you?
I live in the end of the world. I mean, I don't have I live, 12 hours from Washington. We run the Global Penguin Society. So it's difficult even to fundraise because, to have a lunch with a potential donor, I have to fly one day, get to New York or whatever. And so with the awards, that is so much easier to have this media exposure and talk more about the problems that we're facing, the needs that penguins have. But at this point, I'm really focused on helping others. Sometimes conservationists or researchers, we sing to the choir. We talk to people that already know and already believe in conservation. And we need to break those barriers. We need to conquer new things, new circles. And that's why I think the Rolex role is so important, because it's a connection with a new entrepreneurial world with a lot of people, with a lot of influence. And it's so different from the conservation world. So I think this is the power of this recognition, the Rolex National Geographic Explorer of the Year for me. I see it this year compared to others, right?
As soon as this award is connected to it with, such powerful brands of Rolex and National Geographic and the title of Explorer of the Year, it's a pretty epic phrase. Suddenly you can get into rooms that you'd never otherwise get into.
Bertie, can you talk a little bit about the challenges in filming penguins?
They live in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. You take the emperor penguin. There is no other animal that chooses to breed in Antarctica during the Antarctic winter. Arguably the harshest conditions. They don't just live there. They choose to have their chicks at the coldest, darkest, windiest time of year.
That's how you make sure that your chicks are going to be really tough.
Totally. But it's how you make sure that there's no one that's going to eat them, because nothing else can survive. But the other reason for doing that is if you work backwards, it means if you have your chicks in deepest, darkest winter, by the time that they grow up to 5-6 months old, when it's time for them to go off on their own, that is the most benign time of year weather-wise there, and there's also the most amount of food around. So it kind of makes sense. But that means it's really tough filming them. A key tool for us is shooting aerials to kind of set the penguins in context of this incredible landscape that they live in. And we use drones a lot to do that. And to fly a drone, you need really, fine motor control. I'm sure it's similar to climbing in cold places, in that you can't wear big mittens like we can with other types of camera because you don't have the finger dexterity. And so a real game changer for me was wearing heated gloves. and rewiring my gloves so that they would run off the camera batteries. So I could basically just arrive at a location that I wanted to film with the penguins, plug my hands into the camera, and then have these hot, dexterous hands so I could film.
That was all in Antarctic winter?
So we did two main shoots for the Emperor Penguin episode, the first episode. One was about 2.5 months long. We were camping about a mile from a 10,000 strong Emperor Penguin colony. And the real goal for that was, to capture that moment when they leave home. And then we had another team, three colleagues, Alex, Helen, and Pete, and they spent 9 months on a filming the same colony, but they were actually based in a German research base. And they spent 9 months down there. Because it's the Antarctic winter, you can't leave. So you come in on sort of the last plane of the season, and then you're there. And there's no coming home. There's no seeing your friends or family. You're committed. They've got like the head of the station is a doctor who's also a surgeon. So if anything, real bad happens, you've got one dude that's looking after you. Pretty hectic thing that they did. But I mean, you watch what they managed to capture, and it's extraordinary.
And Bertie, just in sort of being a nature cinematographer more broadly, I mean, you're just always in uncomfortable positions. It's like, sadly, animals don't live in room temperature. So you're always struggling.
None of the good ones, As a wildlife filmmaker, I'm often told that, you must be really, really patient to do your job. And I just think that's like, that's just so wrong. Like, I'm not patient. I'm stubborn. I know that by sitting in this uncomfortable position, being in these horrible weather or whatever, I might just get to see something that no one has ever seen before. This animal is going to do something extraordinary and completely, blow my mind. That's what drives me. And working in filmmaking is so cool because not only do you get to like hang out with these cool animals and nerd out about them, but you then get to, try and get other people stoked about the thing that you're stoked about.
It's part of what penguins teach us, right? They are so determined. They just want their chicks to survive no matter what. So, like, Bertie just wants that film to be caught. We want the data. We want the information. I remember when we work with penguins in the forest in the south of New Zealand, in Fiordland area, and the females come at night with the food. So we need to recover the tracking devices to know where are the feeding routes and stuff, all the diving behavior. But they are there, and you have to hide behind the rocks in the forest with heavy rain, like in New Zealand. I've never seen a place on the planet with so much rainfall. So you have to stay still in the cold, with the wet, surrounded by possums, jumping around you. And they don't have to see you because otherwise the females, they don't land. So you stay still there, wet, completely miserable until she lands, and then you get that device. And then you say, okay. And you do that just to get that crazy little tracking device. When I started, when we were doing so many crazy and dangerous things, so the pilot would be flying like this, like in circles, falling on one side without the door, and we were taking pictures of the nest, so then we could count on census. So we just wanted to know how many birds were there.
Like, why is it worth falling out of a plane to count how many penguins there are?
Because the science is what helps to justify conservation action. You just need the science to show facts and say, okay, this population is declining. Then we find out it is declining because they are competing or there is a very harmful fisheries operation, for example. And then you go and talk to these politicians and say, okay, can we create a protected area? Can we manage the fisheries, the oil developments in a better way so it doesn't impact penguins so much? And if I can compare like 30 years with now, the good thing about science is that it allows to avoid unnecessary conflicts. Everybody's happy. Everybody, you can negotiate better because everybody gets something. And that's the power of that piece of information.
We should want to look after penguins, not just because they're like really cute and fluffy and do crazy things like base jump off cliffs. The real reason we should care about penguins and take notice when they're, in decline or their populations are growing, because they're indicators of ocean health. So if penguins are doing badly, that means the ocean's doing badly. And that's a problem for us humans. Like a lot of the air we breathe is made from a healthy ocean. A lot of the food we eat comes from the ocean. It supports billions of people around the world. So when people say, oh, well, you just focus on charismatic animals like penguins and lions and tigers. Well, all these animals, these charismatic kind of animals, they're indicators of the health of the system they live in. And so that's why we focus on them, not just because they make brilliant television.
Poppy, I wonder if I got this from you last time we spoke, but I said that penguins are like the canary in the coal mine for climate change. Because they rely on, and I must have learned this from you because I don't really interact with penguins very often otherwise, but just that because penguins rely on both the ocean and the coast, basically they require both ecosystems to be in healthy working order in order for them to flourish.
When we protect penguins, when we protect the places that they use, we protect hundreds of thousands of other species that coexist with the penguins, that maybe they're not so charismatic as penguins, or maybe we don't even know they exist because we're still discovering species. We know more about other planets than about the ocean. So penguins are amazing because people have this natural emotional connection to them. So they are the perfect tool to inspire the international community, decision makers, businessmen, and convince them about the need to do something for the oceans because of what Bertie described about the importance of the ocean. And I was so glad to learn to hear the last comments by David Attenborough about that. Throughout his life, he realized that if we need to protect the oceans, if we want to protect the planet. So even if we focus on penguins, we work on ocean conservation.
And I will say the one really nice thing about interviewing people that work in ocean conservation is that at least typically when something gets protected in the ocean, it bounces back really quickly and recovers really well, and you can see flourishing, very soon.
If you talk to someone on the street about climate change and you say, what does it mean? The two things they're going to probably talk to you about are temperature and carbon emissions. But both those things are abstract terms that to that person on the street don't actually mean much. Whereas if we actually talk about what climate change leads to, which is the destruction of nature, suddenly that's like a quantifiable thing. If you protect a piece of land or a piece of ocean, and then you see that the biomass, the weight of living things increases, like the number of fish returns. Suddenly, it's like, oh right, like conservation actually makes sense. Like you make a change and a good thing happens.
Yeah, and then it actually works.
Exactly. It's quantifiable. It's tangible. I feel like that is the way to inspire change. Is prove that it works.
And Poppy, do you have any examples of penguin populations that are thriving?
One example is a colony that we found about 20 years ago. It was just starting. It had only 6 pairs of penguins, but it was severely impacted by human disturbance. People were going there to take dogs, hunting, fishing, throwing garbage. They were setting the bushes where the penguins were nesting on fire to make barbecues. So we started protecting the colony. It was very hard at the beginning. We closed a fence. And then people started to come with guns, threatening us, cutting the fences to trespass. They were putting glues on the lockers so we couldn't come into the land. Many situations, but we needed to protect the colony because that was a founder group. The founder group is the first group of brave penguins that decide to settle down for the first time and explore. They were prospecting if that place was safe for them. So after a couple of years, we were able to designate this as a wildlife refuge against those problems that, in the middle of those problems that we had, we can control that. And the colony started to grow and grow. And from those 12 penguins that originated the colony, now we have over 8,000 breeders.
I've heard that you also name some of your penguins that you're tracking after celebrities. Because you have like Taylor Swift or Messi or like...
We have a Bertie Gregory, of course.
Wait, Poppy, surely there's the Alex Honnold.
No, that's the ice climbing penguin. That's the one that you found.
Yeah.
We had an Alex. We had an Alex at the beginning. It's online on our website, globalpenguinsociety.org. You don't need to download any app or pay anything. You click there and you see the the real time position of that penguin in the ocean.
You can
And you
find
see
Taylor Swift or Messi at their home nesting.
exactly,
right now.
exactly.
Yeah.
You can see, and we have Roger Federer, we have Barbara Streisand, we have, as I said, Bertie Gregory, we have Jill Tiffenthaler, the CEO of Nat Geo. The project helps to identify the places where penguins overlap with harmful human activities so we can improve those activities. It's so important to understand that each penguin has a life, a personality, a family, so it's important to connect a person with a penguin. For example, these Magellanic penguins that we're tracking, throughout their lifetime, they swim the equivalent of going around the planet 12 times swimming. So if these little guys are doing that sacrifice against fisheries, climate change, pollution, human disturbance, we need to do something to help these guys and to secure conditions in the ocean so these penguins and all the wildlife in the ocean can thrive.
Yeah, Bertie, can you talk a little bit about how you stay on top of technology basically to allow you to tell these stories better?
Film festivals and stuff, I meet a lot of people that are trying to get into wildlife film, and everyone always seems to be obsessed and ask about the cameras. And every now and again, you'll get someone that actually asks about how do you film that, like they're interested in animals. And those are the people that I always pay attention to, because you can be technically the best camera person in the world, but if you don't know how to find the animal, all of your knowledge is pointless. And so I am interested in technology because it's obviously critical to what I do, but I really make sure that I don't kind of stray and get too hung up on the technology, because if you can't find the animal in the first place, you're in big trouble.
Have you ever met Jimmy Chan through your you met Jimmy?
Yeah,
because he's, for anyone that doesn't know, like renowned filmmaker or whatever. He filmed Free Solo among other things, but he's a perfect example of the point that you're just making, because he often doesn't know where the buttons on the camera are. He doesn't really know how to operate that well necessarily. But what I've always thought is that his true gift as a cinematographer, a climbing filmmaker, just as like a general adventurer, is that he's always been fit enough that he can stay out in front and basically get the photos. Because if you're trying to shoot other climbers, you basically have to be able to keep up with a heavy backpack and stay in front and get the shot and not be too tired. And so, he's a perfect example of like, well, it doesn't totally matter if you know how to use the camera, as long as, you have to know the bare minimum, but the most important thing is that you have to be able to get there. You have to get to these difficult places, or else there's no shot to be had.
Totally. I'm obviously slightly underplaying the importance of technology to some extent. I think a real key tool for me has been drone technology. When I was starting out, they were just starting to become sort of commercially practical and available, rather than needing to build them in your bedroom out of spare parts. So that's kind of an exciting thing. And as the technology gets better, the flight time increases, the range increases, the power of the lenses, which is very important because it means you don't need to be close in order to get a good shot. It's a very exciting time, to be able to show something that we think we understand from that aerial perspective for the first time.
Like, what are your current projects to help with penguin conservation?
We work to strengthen a global conservation culture. And as a personal level, I would like to leave this planet with all the main hotspots where for every single species of penguins protected, because that will be the source of the penguin populations for the future.
Out of curiosity, like personal curiosity, so how many species are protected right now, or how many other areas are protected?
So you have 19 different species of penguins recognized today,
yep.
And half of them are listed as threatened according to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature in the red list.
Poppy, can you give listeners any advice as to how they can help protect penguins?
You don't need to have penguins in your country, not even in your city, to be able to help them. All the planet is connected through the atmosphere and through the ocean. Whatever we do, even in our park, will have an impact on any species, including the penguins, if you care about them. Because the plastics end up in the ocean and they can end up in our nests with the penguins. But it's also about being a responsible consumer, to make sure that what we consume has a sustainable source of production and also a sustainable destination, and make a wise use of the resources, water, electricity, gas, whatever. We could be living so much better with such a smaller footprint on our planet. I think that we all have a responsibility to do something and give back.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Poppy and Birdie, it's been amazing. We'll put the links for the Global Penguin Society in the show notes and also where you can watch the Secrets of the Penguins. So for anybody listening that wants to watch the show, I guess it's, you said Disney Plus, Nat Geo?
Correct, yeah. Disney Plus or Hulu, wherever you watch your stuff.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for listening to Planet Visionaries, a Sony Music Entertainment production for the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative.